I'm Jai Long, and this is the Make Your Break podcast. In today's conversation with Tom Noske, we're going to go over what a personal brand is and how can you make a lot more money as a creative entrepreneur when you lean into building a personal brand.
I genuinely feel like personal branding might be the single greatest wealth building opportunity to exist in human history.
We'll also talk about mindset blocks that we have, the imposter syndrome, and what it actually takes to show up prolific on social media. So many of us struggle with feeling judgment from others, people that we don't even know. I hope you get a lot from today's conversation. Tom, what's one hard truth that you've had to accept being a creator?
I said this to my students this morning, actually on a call, but I was like, I think content creation, building a personal brand, the kind of businesses that we want to run, it's patience to the power of 10 to the power of 10. It's just a level of patience and persistence and pig-headedness that you just don't really have to deal with in many other businesses. I think there is just a level of resilience and persistence and patience that will test and retest you dozens and dozens and dozens of times through your career. And I think when I finally acknowledge that, I'm going to achieve what I want to achieve, it's just always going to take way longer than I want it to, that things actually ironically started to work faster than I thought they could. And so it's this level of persistence and resilience that you have to have that I just never expected.
You know, out of all the entrepreneurs that I talk to, and I've known you for a long time, and I've watched your content grow exponentially over the years, and I actually just brought up on my phone a YouTube video that you did on your podcast, say like 6 years ago or something, and it was awesome having a look. When you look at yourself from 6 years ago that you showed up on YouTube and maybe no one was watching, like how do you feel looking at that stuff now, where you are today?
It feels really cool because life, when you're living it, doesn't feel very linear. Like when you're living in the moment and going through the motions and each month kind of passes by, it feels very up and down. Like everything feels like I achieved a lot and then I achieved nothing, and I achieved a lot, I achieved nothing. But then if you actually look back over the last 6 years or last 10 years, it does feel like one step, two step up and to the right. And so looking back at that now, I'm excited by it, but living it that just feels like a different life, to be honest. I often look back at that period of time and I almost see that as a fully complete, open and closed chapter of my life that I lived. And then I got to use that evidence or use that experience to then move into the next evolution. But obviously from the outside, it looks like, progression up and to the right. So it's really funny. I'm sure you feel the same, right? You kind of go through these chapters in your life. And 6 years ago, when I had you on the podcast, hilariously, was almost like an open and closed chapter of my life that I got to live that obviously informed a lot of decisions now. But yeah, I just feel proud, to be honest. It's very cool to be able to look back.
You know, you're also an endurance athlete. You love to run, cycle, get out there, put out a lot of time. And before you just talked about resilience and sort of showing up over and over. And this whole thing is about showing up over and over, even when you don't see results. Do you feel like that resilience in sports for you has helped sharpen your mindset when it comes to content creation or your business or your podcast or your YouTube or whatever it is?
Yeah, I think it's a tolerance for a lot of creatives feel this need for everything to be, not everything to be perfect, but perfectionism to a certain extent, but everything to feel like it's growing on top of one another. And I think I learnt from quite a young age, but then relearned when I got back into training competitively and training seriously, that 90% of the time it's just going to be go through the motions to make sure that today was a tick in the box of moving you in the right direction. And there will be long periods where it's almost like progress below the surface. Like today's run was purely just to make sure that you got on your feet for an hour. There was no progression. There was no fitness development. There was no intervals. There was no
PBs.
No PBs, no nothing.
It's just your feet on the sidewalk.
Yep, for an hour.
One step after the other.
That's it.
For a long period of time.
Yeah, and you might have 12 weeks, 24 weeks, 6 months, 12 months where you're just training each and every day to make sure your feet were on the pavement for an hour that day. And I think content creation is the same, where sometimes you are going to have long periods of time where it's not these needle moving pieces. It's not this massive forward momentum. It's just keep making something, keep showing up. And I think training has given me a certain tolerance for, I don't want to say tolerance for shit content, but it's given me a tolerance for imperfect work that I think a lot of creators really struggle with.
It's almost like training.
Yeah, it's almost like training. Yeah, it's training. And you're just continuously doing it day in, day out with the idea that it'll eventually culminate in something in the future.
If I can share a quick story with you, I remember, and I feel like you would relate to this. I remember I mentored a coach quite a few years ago, and I felt like this coach was going to do big things. They were very ambitious. They had some unrealistic goals, and I could see all of that in that person. And they launched their first offer without much of an audience. They didn't really make too much content and everything. And after they had their offer out in the world for a few days, they only had a couple of people buy it, and then they cancelled it, and then they offered refunds, and then they sort of closed everything down. And when I met up with them, because they were a paying client of mine, I met up with him for a follow-up to see how it's all going when he told me all of that. And he just said, like, I failed, you know? And I feel like you'd feel the same way. I just felt like he didn't even start. Yeah. You know, it's almost like I didn't get a PB because I went for a run for half an hour and then nothing happened. You know, it's like, but it's I think it's that mentality. Anyone that I see that's like prolific online or with their business or with anything in life, it comes down to, well, they showed up an unreasonable amount of times, and they knew that it was going to take an unreasonable amount of effort to get themselves to where they need to be.
Yeah. I almost see those moments as like entry tickets to the game. And so the more times you've paid that entry fee, the better chance you have at eventually succeeding. And so you should almost see those moments where you release something and you wanted 100 people and 4 people bought, and it's not enough to get you through to the end of the next launch, and you're lost in terms of how you're going to produce the cash flow. Those moments, even in terms of creating content, posting 30 pieces of content in 30 days and no one fucking watching. Those are entry tickets to the game. And each time you pay that entry fee, you get to separate yourself from the competition who didn't do that. And so every time you encounter a situation where it's, I guess, worth quitting, like a situation that most people would quit in, you can almost see that as, oh, I'm in a moment where half my competition is going to stop and half my competition is going to stay. And if you've gone through 5 or 10 or 20, or in your situation, probably hundreds, it makes sense why you've achieved what you've achieved, because you've halved your competition hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Yeah, it is just a level of resilience, to be honest.
I actually talk about this in the book that I just wrote. And I talked about how I met someone that was really successful. And when I looked at them and the volume of work that they did and everything else, I was like, yeah, it makes sense that they're really successful. Like, I can see why they're really successful. Yeah. And it's so often we can see someone where maybe they haven't hit the success that they wanted or whatever it is, but a lot of the times their goals don't match the action that they take. And a good example of this is like, maybe you're a musician and you want to sell 1 million albums. And to do that, you're like doing 2 record store signings and spending $10,000 on ads. It's like, can you hit $1 million or sell 1 million units? It's like, maybe. Yeah. But the chances are probably not. So it's the actions don't match what the results that they want, if that makes sense.
I had a friend of mine who's an incredible creator. He's a runner and a poet. You've probably seen his content before, but he's a runner and a poet, and he released a book of poems about running.
Cool.
And he wanted to have $1 million book launch, and I was out for dinner with him and I was speaking about it, and I was like, okay, well, what's the math of having $1 million book launch? And we figured it out. It would need 400,000 email subscribers. And I saw the cogs turn in his head of like, oh, the level of work that I need to produce in order to get to $1 million book launch is achievable, but unfathomable compared to what he was doing right now. And so there is like this, no one I've ever met.
So almost the gap in between is hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
because
once
it's not
you
strategy,
see that
is it? It's like, well, I've got 20,000 subscribers. I need 400,000. And in between is like, I hope I make $1 million.
Yes.
But it's not, there isn't any substance there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a great, I saw this piece of content once where someone was like, take the person you admire in terms of content output. It's harder if you admire people in terms of, you know, broader businesses. But in terms of content output, if you take the amount of videos they've produced and you divide it by your average weekly output, that is how many years you owe before you can expect the results that person has. And so I've posted somewhere in the range of 2,000 to 2,500 pieces of content over the last 10 years. If you post 5 times a week on average, that's somewhere like, I think 6 or 7 years of your current posting schedule in order to be at least deserving of the success that I've had. And so there is this level of work that you have to have done before you can even begin to expect. Not that you can't enjoy success along the way. I think I try to pair the patience argument with also the argument of, I felt successful in my first year of business.
Totally.
But I only made 52,000 Australian dollars. It's like, that felt incredible at the time because it meant I could leave my job and do this full time. And so the success that I felt in that year, even though it was 52,000 Australian dollars, was still pretty incredible. And then I got to have the second year and the third year and the fourth year. And obviously if I had gone into that thinking I'm not going to be happy until my $1 million year, well, then I would have had to wait 8 or 9 years to get to that point. But I got to enjoy the success along the way of getting there. So it is this just huge level of work. No one I've ever met who is successful, no one I've ever met in person has ever surprised me about their success. I've never met someone and gone, you're undeserving. I've always met them and gone, makes sense.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
It is interesting because I've talked about this a lot with like a lot of successful people that I know. It's like when someone that you admire, they walk into the room, it's like this mutual respect of like, oh, you also didn't give up, you know? And then they're like, yeah, I also ran the marathon. It's like, you ran the marathon. I mean, even if you walked through it, it's you showed up and you did that.
Yeah.
And so you can't take that away from someone.
No.
And I think that is like it's a really cool thing because only those that has run that marathon know the pain that it actually took to get through, you know?
It's a beast of a journey, but I think helping people understand, one, that you're probably doing all the right things, just not enough of it is a really good place for people to get to. Like, I think there's a huge argument for whatever you're currently doing, you probably just need to do more of it for longer and you'll be more successful than you can possibly imagine. I like to think about it like, I like to look at people who are a long way ahead of me rather than my peers in terms of people that I look up to for success and guidance. Because sometimes when you look at your peers, you might see someone who's, you might be in your early 30s or late 20s or early 20s, and you might look at someone who's a couple of years ahead and go, I don't know if I'm going to be able to bridge the gap. Meanwhile, I look at Tony Robbins, which is probably more delusional, and I genuinely imagine that I could get there by the time I'm 70 years old because it's, another 40 years. Yeah, if I continue doing what I'm doing for 40 years, I'm probably going to achieve things that I can't possibly comprehend at the moment. And so I think there's a lot of value in looking at people who have paid an enormous amount for the success that they have over an enormous period of time and then acknowledging, oh, I'm doing all the right things, probably just not enough of it.
So when you say not enough, do you think things have changed a little bit online with how much that you need to show up compared to like 5 years ago or 10 years ago? And like, I'll just give you a quick example. So one mentor that changed my mindset in many different ways, and it was just from his podcasts and books, but it was Russell Brunson. And so I listened to a podcast where he kind of used to do these podcasts where he would be in a car and he's talking while he's like driving. And he just shared this one piece of wisdom that sort of hit me. And he said, if you can show up weekly for a year and publish, you will never have to look for money again. Yeah. And I remember listening to that and I was like, I need to show up weekly for a year. Okay. And so I started my podcast, and within a year, I think we did over $1 million in sales. And I was like, that was literally the game changer. I just had to show up consistently. But do you think today, so that was 2019, do you think today things could be a little bit different? Like, should we be showing up more prolific on more channels, or should we be going deeper on less channels and maybe more considered content?
I think it's the annoying answer is a combination of both. So I think intentionality is huge. Like, intentionality right now is massive. You need to make sure that you are, you're not just posting shit for the sake of posting something. There needs to be an intention. But at the same time, I think with AI kind of replacing, I guess, certainty and that top level of here's 5 tips on achieving this outcome in this time frame. People are just going to ChatGPT or Claude if they want the answer to those things. What people want now is the person and connecting with that human being. And so the content you need to post today is to be intentional, but also just prioritize showing up. Like if you can create a piece of content where your personality is the main driver of engagement, then you separate yourself from that top end content that is just getting weeded out by AI. So I think it's this overlapping of those two things where all the preparation, all of the, horsepower of your idea has kind of just been wiped out by the option to search that thing up immediately. And so what now remains is the things that people were connecting with the whole time, which is people's personality. And so if you can reduce that time frame between the idea that you have and executing on that idea, podcasts are a great example because it is just it's dozens and dozens and dozens of micro pieces of content that we're speaking about as we go through this conversation. And so if you can find a way for these moments to show up online more consistently with less preparation, I think that's what's going to win predominantly, because it's not that more volume needs to cut through. It's just that in a world that is moving towards, as quality has become more accessible, as editing, AI platforms that can edit your videos for you, as camera quality on iPhones has gotten crazy, as crazy visuals and graphics and all of these things, and as anyone can go on AI and give me a script for a YouTube video that's going to have these moments and these engagement hooks and use this quality of hook and this title and this thumbnail, as all of those things get commoditized, what kind of remains is who's the person underneath all of that stuff. And that's what shows up in a conversation like this. And so the volume question, I don't think it's a question of, if you show up 3 days a week on YouTube and 3 times a day on Instagram, that's the recipe for success. I actually think it's in that level of volume that you don't have the option to script your video, perfectly manicure everything or over edit everything. It has to be real. And so by forcing yourself to produce more, what's actually the byproduct is your personality is forced to come out. And that's what people are going to connect with.
I think when you get a piece of advice like that, 2019, when I started my podcast, you also got to realize the entry point, no one had a podcast and no one was publishing once per week, where now there's a lot more people publishing. But one thing that you talked about there is entry level. So the entry level for anyone to look like a polished podcast house, YouTuber, on any of the platforms, creating any kind of content now is it's pretty hard to wow the audience in terms of that production. Do you feel like now with everybody being able to, the entry level is so much lower now, we need to maybe step more onto that personal brand to be able to become a one of one?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think that's always been the case. It's just, it's really vulnerable, to be honest. I think one of the things that once your script is taken away, your hook is taken away, the quality of your editing is taken away, the quality of your camera is taken away, the only thing that's left is you and the person that you're trying to speak to. And that's a really vulnerable piece of content to make. It's really difficult to get on camera and just speak your mind about a topic for 3 minutes and then post that online. The most ballsy type of piece of content you could make is a Loom recording of you talking about something and trying to help someone for 3 to 5 minutes and then uploading that with no editing. And so I think it was always the people that we connected with. It was always personal branding that people connected with. It's just you were able to hide a bit better before. You were able to write a really good script and you were able to write a really good hook and you were able to over edit things and you were able to add a really cool thumbnail and show your, have these layers between you and the person who's receiving the content. Whereas now if I want to learn how to do something, I can get it in 3 seconds with ChatGPT, or I can go Googling on YouTube. I'm always going to go for ChatGPT. So now the content I want to consume is the podcast. I'm watching more content through the education I invest in nowadays than YouTube and Instagram and social media, because I'd rather actually connect with the person and that person have context on my situation and then watch content directed to me as opposed to go and watch a YouTube video. And I think that's just a byproduct of, well, all the information that I need is now in a chatbot.
It's not only just connection, hey, it's also like you want to see someone that's done the thing that you want to do. And then so you see that and you can relate to the person. And a lot of the times, I don't know if you agree on this, but I've been really bullish on a thing that I like to call like boring content. And so boring YouTube content, like I remember talking to Morgan about this years ago when he was just watching golf on YouTube. And I'm like, yeah, that's really boring. And what I watch now is people camping, like solo camping on YouTube. Goes for an hour. There's no hooks. There's no nothing. It's just someone setting up a tent in the rain. And I like cook dinner. And I'm like, I really love this boring content. But then you end up falling in love with the creator a lot more because you can actually, there's no filters there. They're not trying to perform in any way. It's just, there's no information. There's no nothing else. It's just, that's it. Do you think now, like when we're creating content, like the more that we sort of show ourselves that way, maybe not like boring content, but like maybe showing different aspects of ourselves that we haven't shown before, or like approaching it from like a different angle? Yeah,
I agree with the boring content angle, but then it becomes the layer or two deeper that becomes more important. And so your charisma becomes so much more important. Your presentation, your articulation, your ability to convey a message without a script, all of those things become way more important. And so my blanket advice wouldn't be post boring content, because most people need to work on their ability to articulate themselves. They need to work on their charisma. They need to work on their camera presentation. They need to work on being able to look at a black lens and not feel shy and awkward and anxious about the situation. And so I agree that boring content's going to take over, but that means you need to invest your time into the areas that most people were able to hide behind with a script. And so it's funny, like I'm considering taking acting classes purely because I think it'll help me with content. And that's because the only things that I can't hide behind camera presentation anymore, I can't hide behind a script, I can't hide behind all of those things. And so what's left is, how good of a presenter am I? How good am I at the education I have? How good am I at articulating a point? How much am I reading? How much am I investing in my knowledge? And how much of that is coming out in my content? Because those things matter so much more now than I think they ever have. And so yes, boring content, but boring content from talented people. People who have like invested their time and energy.
They're almost like a master at something. So the reason why you're there, like the guy camping, he's like a master at that. He goes and does courses on how to like start a fire and everything. So I'm watching his mastery almost.
Yes. Yeah. You're watching other people's mastery. Like I had a funny moment where with my students, we basically have like, we call it asynchronous one-on-one support. You submit something and we get back to it within a certain time frame. And because it's so quick, I'm often quite blunt. And sometimes I use Makili as my filter for, is this too mean? And so I'll record like a Loom video for my students. And then I'll get Makili to sit in front of them. Like, before I publish this, was this too mean? And it's so funny because when she started reviewing these, she's like, I've never seen you in a flow state like this before. And I think it is that thing of you're watching someone in their zone of genius, their mastery. There's a brilliant creator who I really love. He's in the fitness space. He's Higher Up Wellness, if you've ever seen him before, Michael Smoke. And he just posts face-to-camera iPhone videos. And it's so funny because there's so many people who have made kind of educational pieces of content about how to make content like Higher Up Wellness. And they're like, FaceTime video, just rant to your iPhone. Don't worry about the hook. Don't worry about anything. But then Michael went to university for sales and marketing and by accident enrolled in this course. It was the only one in America with basically a persuasive sales coach. And so he had an education on how to do persuasive marketing and his charisma and his articulation and all of those things that matter. And so he's taken that mastery and then put it into face to iPhone content around fitness. And so it's the layer beneath Michael that created his ability to then just project.
Yeah, because if I just get on the camera and do something, it's just, I don't know what I'm doing.
But not necessarily. Like, I mean, of course, you've got such a wealth of experience that I could tell you to tell me about how to get my first wedding client and you'll go and it'll be amazing. Whereas most people probably need to find first, okay, what's my zone of genius? What do I have And it doesn't need to be, you don't need to be incredible at this. I often say there is something in your life that no one ever has to remind you to do. No one ever has to tell you is important. You have to pull yourself away from this thing. If you made content about that, you're so much more likely to succeed than forcing yourself to make content about this because you've seen me do it or Jai do it or Morgan do it or anyone else do it. Find the thing that you are the best at and then use that in your content.
It's so cool today that there's so many creators that are in so many niches that do amazing things and they can blow up. And you wouldn't think 10 years ago that you could do this. And an example is I could go onto YouTube all day long and create some stuff and it'll, it's like I'm passionate about it, but it doesn't really go anywhere and I'm not really optimizing and doing anything. And then I'll go onto someone, I went onto this guy's channel not too long ago and he's got 4 million subscribers and each video has about 4 to 5 to 6 million views and it's him playing with his RC cars. And so it's just him. He goes, I just got a new RC car. Let's go and have a turn. And he goes out in the street and he just races up and down the streets. And it's just him with his phone chasing the car and then talking about it. And you just see his stoke on his face. And I know he's getting brand deals and all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, man, this guy is literally in his genius zone. If you thought that couldn't be a genius zone, it is.
Yeah.
And he's got income and a job from this and, and everything else follows. And it's incredible to be able to actually physically see that.
Yeah, there's another guy, I can't remember his name, but he's the guy that's obsessed with trains. He's like this Gunzel. Yeah. He's now the co-host of Top Gear.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Like, unbelievable story. This guy who's just loves trains, posted content, gained millions of followers, and now the BBC have hired him as the co-host of Top Gear. It's wild.
It's amazing. Do you think right now as creators, now, and I feel like you've already sort of talked about this quite a lot, but just want to spell it out a little bit more. Yeah. Do you think you should be bullish on creating a personal brand right now if you are a creator, a creative, an artist in that realm?
Yes. Yeah. There's actually a huge trend and I'm really happy about it. It's like show you working, not your work. I think there is personal branding, right, I think people conflate personal branding with having a following or having views or likes or engagement. It's not. Personal branding is you owning equity in your name. And so when someone says Jai Long or someone says Tom Noske, there's a certain amount of equity in that, whether it's trust equity or whether it's the value that you have in brand deals or it's your ability to walk into a room and people know you. There is something there. And the beautiful part about that, and this is the reason why business owners who have sold companies for hundreds of millions of dollars will still then go and build a personal brand, because your personal brand is equity that you will own till the day that you die, probably beyond. Someone like Dave Ramsey is able to build Ramsey Solutions and then that will continue long after he's gone. And so your personal brand is, I think people are quickly realizing it's the greatest asset you can build. Regardless of how small or niche or granular your audience is, like RC cars or trains or whatever, I think it's an opportunity that's unlike many things. I say this sparingly because I feel like I would get pushback on it, but I genuinely feel like personal branding might be the single greatest wealth building opportunity to exist in human history. Like there has very seldomly been an experience where you can talk about things that you like and within a matter of years have something that is capable of generating millions of dollars off nothing but the horsepower of your own name. Like that's pretty fucking incredible. And so, yeah, I think even if you're a musician and you're like, I want to sell through my Spotify listens, or I want to earn income from my Spotify listens, build a personal brand and then direct people to go and listen to you on Spotify. It's also funny because people are kind of in denial. I'm sure you have experienced this now. I imagine you've met some authors. If you look at the best-selling authors of the last however many years, like Ryan Holiday, James Clear, all of these people, they all had email lists with hundreds of thousands of subscribers before they wrote their first book. James Clear had, I think, 250,000 people reading Habits daily before he released Atomic Habits. And so it's no surprise that became a best-selling book. He had hundreds of thousands of people reading his daily emails before he ever released the book. Ryan Holiday as well was writing about Stoicism to an email list before he ever released his first book. And so I think people are kind of in denial, thinking that this path where you can just create art and people will show up, I don't think that's ever existed. I think that's kind of a fallacy that people have used to push back against showing up online. Even the idea that you can only release your best work. I've always said the Picasso quote, but it's like estimated that he produced 15,000 paintings over the course of his lifetime, but you and I probably know him for 4. And so to a certain extent, you have to embrace content. I think content's kind of become a dirty word, but if you look at it face value for what it actually is, it's a means of getting your genius out into the world.
He also, like, when you think about it like that, it's like he showed up and created 14,900 and
something crazy.
Yeah, just like to be able to be that prolific. With like personal brands, I think a lot of people are like confused by it because they don't really understand it and they think like it's a new thing. But I would actually argue and say like it's really not a new thing and people have been doing it for a long time. And one idol of mine for personal branding, and I actually think is one of the first people, well, there's actually been a lot of first, but Paris Hilton was one of like the first prolific personal brands that she would call ahead and get, the paparazzi to meet her where she was at the club so she could palm them away and pretend she didn't want to be hassled by the paparazzi. And she would like create these little micro moments to build her brand, which in turn, built her empire. But it's really interesting now, like she could open any door now. There's no doors closed to Paris Hilton. If she wanted to launch a book, if she wanted to make a movie, like it doesn't matter. It's all based on her name, like you're saying. Yeah. And me being in the process of like trying to write a book as an author, what's really interesting, I had quite a few conversations with publishers or agents, and they don't ask me, what's the book about? How well do you write? How many chapters are they? They say, how big is your email list? Come back to me when it's 100,000. How big is your Instagram? Like how many people have bought from you? What's your customer base? And so a lot of people in that industry, because I'm sort of going into that industry now, they're realizing really quickly that you're not actually an author, you're a personal brand. Like you kind of, it's so hard today to make your break with a really genius idea or whatever it is and just come to the table and say, hey, someone please publish this and blow me up. And nowadays you have to blow yourself up and then come to the table and say, hey, here's my name, here's my equity. Yeah. I'd like to join forces with you.
Yeah. It's back to like the patience thing, right? Like I don't think there's ever been, I would imagine there's a lot of people who maybe listen to your podcast who are either early or unsure of the direction that they're going to go into. Maybe they're monetizing through freelance or they're monetizing through whatever and they're unsure of what this will eventually look like. When I first started producing content, I was a personal trainer who was learning photography, and now 9 years later, I have a multi-million-dollar business. That doesn't make any sense in terms of a 9-year period, and it's only because I just started producing content. I don't think there is another opportunity that exists where you can just start with no direction except I'm going to post something today and again tomorrow and again the next day and then again the day after that can turn into multiple millions of dollars in a matter of a decade. And so it is this beautiful opportunity where someone who's prolific is only going to be more prolific. Someone who's got a wealth of experience in business or life or whatever, if they start making content, they're going to move pretty quickly. But someone who has nothing, someone who's working a job, someone who has no real idea of what they're going to do with their life can just make the decision to show up today and again tomorrow and again the day after that. And in a very short period of time have an awful lot of momentum towards wherever they want to point it in. It's funny, I wrote about this as well, but if and when I choose to write a book, I get to skip the queue. And that's only because of my personal brand. And so I get to pass fiction authors who have maybe been writing for their entire lives and are far better writers than I am, but it's because I have an email list and an audience and thousands of paying customers that I get to go, yep, I'm just going to jump up there right now and then end up in a room full of best-selling authors. Or even in terms of business, like, it's unbelievable the conversations I've been able to have purely as a result of the fact that I started making content 9 years ago and never stopped.
When you first started making that content, did you know why you were making it?
No.
Were you just, okay, so I'm just going to have, a bit of a lash at this thing and just put myself out there and I feel silly, I feel stupid, I don't know what gear I'm using, I don't know if I look good, I don't know if I sound good.
Yeah.
Like tell me through that process.
It took me 2 full years to speak to a camera. I actually didn't speak. I didn't speak to a camera until 2 years into making content, and it was just then speaking to my Instagram story. And so my first 2 years was just, I was a faceless photographer on Instagram. And when I first started, it was purely a place to post photography because I was learning the skill, and I had a friend of mine who'd built a bit of an audience. And it was like 5,000 followers. And I thought that was amazing.
Huge
and
back in the day.
Yeah, huge back in the day. And I saw him posting content and sharing his travels and things like that. And I was kind of disgruntled in my career. I didn't really like it, but I didn't have any other direction to go. So I spent some savings, bought a camera, and decided to start taking photos and sharing it. And so there was no plan. There was no goal of
no unrealistic
money.
goal of I'm going to make millions of dollars and create short form reels and all this kind of stuff.
Short form reels didn't even exist. And so there's like this, it's funny. Like I'm not going to be one of these creators. I think it was like the first generation of creators all told the second generation that they're narcissistic for wanting to make money. They were almost like, no, you should be altruistic like me. I just started making videos because I wanted to make videos. It's like, that doesn't exist anymore. No one who starts out making content doesn't have the goal of making money. So you are not a bad person if you're sitting there right now thinking, fuck, I'm not starting from a good place like Tom was 10 years ago. It's That doesn't exist anymore. And so it's okay if you have the goal of making money, but I think it's simultaneously understanding that yes, this can make you a lot of money, but right now you might just need to focus on getting better at talking to the camera. And that's actually the biggest needle moving, most important thing you can spend your time doing is just, I need to show up again today and again tomorrow and again after that. And 3 years from now or 4 years from now, you might then turn it into a business. Again, the patience thing, like it pains me whenever I have people come to me and they're like, I need this to work now. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to stretch your time horizon a bit because I can, if you told me.
When you work that out, you let me know.
Yeah. It's like if someone came to me and they're like, Tom, I need this to work in 5 years, I'd be like, you've got a very good chance. Whereas if someone came to me and they're like, I need this to work in the next 30 days, I'd be like, this might be a bit tough. How am I going to have this hard conversation with you? And so there's just a level of, have big goals, but then dumb it down to what's the biggest needle moving number one task I can do today. And that might just be post another video.
You're very much a numbers guy, I've realized.
I've become a numbers guy. It's very funny. Like I hated school. I hated every part of it. I hated maths. I hated all of it. But as I've had a few experiences. So like my dad was very successful when I was very young and then went bankrupt when I was
What did he
15.
do?
So he ran a logistics company, shipping and logistics. He did, Morgan's from Warrnambool, all of the wind farms through the South Australia, Victoria coastline was my dad.
Wow.
And so he did the transport and logistics for all of those wind farms and all the wood chip and around Australia. And he was very, very successful country boy hard-working dude and good at making money. And then through one bad deal in around 2012 or 2013, he went bankrupt and has just never recovered.
Wow.
And so I've learned through their experience and through my parents, in the blink of an eye, they went from like my dad's achieving amazing things to, wow, my dad's good at making money, terrible at keeping it. And so I realized then that those are two separate things that you have to do in tandem. And so it's heartbreaking. This is a whole separate conversation because I'm obsessed with this, but it's heartbreaking whenever I see young entrepreneurs who are making a lot of money, but just spending it like it's nobody's business. Because I think just trying to make money and failing is better than making a lot of money and getting to the end of a 10-year period and realizing that you have nothing to show for it. And there's a lot of people who end up in that situation. And so
most people.
And so I've thankfully had my parents' experience, and that made me from a very young age, like a very meticulous saver and invested from a very young age. And then that obviously translated into my business. So I quickly began to realize, X amount of content produces X amount of views, produces X amount of leads, produces X amount of sales. And so nowadays my business is just, I post this, we get this much traffic converts at this. I could tell you off the top of my head how much we converted last week and the week before that and the week before that and the week before that. And that's just because that is business. It's just a numbers game. And I think content's the same thing. It's a process of, it's just what's the most important task today and how can I do that thing? And then what is that going to produce for me in a year from now or 2 years from now?
Would you say that you're more analytical or more creative, or are you able to sort of switch between the two? So
I think I started creative.
Okay. Yeah. And so if you started creative, you're looking at something creatively of like, this output here that I can create, I know it's going to have a life of itself and everything. And then you've been able to develop the skill of, also with that many views, I can convert this many people. And then you've been able to combine the both.
Yeah, it's a blessing. I think it's like, honestly, one of the great blessings of my life is the unfortunate situation that my parents went through, because it's turned me into a very obsessive numbers person. But at the same time, I'm very emotional in the content I make. I'm not one of these people that can sit down and force myself to do something if I'm not creatively inspired by it. And so I have those two things in tandem where obviously I know that I want to produce a lot of content, but I also need to make sure that it's creatively fulfilling. Even my business, like we just made a huge shift in the business, and it was purely a selfish decision to remain more in my zone of genius and less in the places that I don't want to be doing. And so if I was purely analytical, I think I wouldn't be running the business I'm running or creating the content I'm creating. But if I was purely creative, I wouldn't have the business at all. And so I think it is this blessing, and it shocks me. It's funny. It shocks me every time I speak to my clients, because most of them, the answer is, have you done the math? And most of the time it's just no. And then they do the math and they're like, oh, I could coach myself. Like, it's actually pretty easy once you figure it out. And so it is this, it's a trait that I'm stoked to have.
So you obviously have pattern recognition, which is like a skill set or an ability that a lot of really successful people have in common, because once you start seeing something, you can repeat the process over and over and then sort of follow that down. But going back to your creative genius, I know for you, I don't know this for a fact, but this is something that I've learned from your social media over the years, that you have a camera at your desk and it's set up all the time with a light. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so you could sit there and think of a piece of content, and then you could like create a short form reel, and it's pretty low entry effort for you to do that and publish. So even though you have it all set up and you're all ready to go, do you have moments where you feel like maybe you want to create the content because the analytics saying today we need to post, but you just don't want to, or you feel imposter syndrome, or you're feeling like you just, what you got to say is not worthy, or the way that you're delivering it is just, it just doesn't feel right for you today?
Yeah. And I think this is probably more of the analytics mind, but if you looked at it like a seesaw, and it's like on one side you've got effort and the other side you've got resilience or resistance. I think like most creators are in denial about this. They think it's just 10 out of 10 effort, do as much as you possibly can, as well as you possibly can all the time. Whereas I actually place a high value on how can I make things easier for me to do, require less upfront effort, require less pre-production. Like my dream piece of content is zero prep, high value, low editing. Like if I can just show up and it's maybe me giving feedback to a student, or me helping someone, or showing up to a call, or even showing up here today, it's like, if I can do this is the dream piece of content. And so I think it's a balancing act. You cannot produce your best work every single day. It's just not possible. And so, if we try to post 3 times a week on YouTube, every now and again, I'll sink my teeth into, prepare a presentation and I'll go crazy with slides. But then every now and again, I'll just turn the camera on and rant about a topic for 20. I'll literally put a timer on my phone on my desk and just press start and rant for 20 minutes. And then whatever comes out. I actually have a joke where I'll record those videos and I'll finish by going, "That's your problem, Cal, my editor. I'll see you later." Like I'd tell to him, "Sorry, mate, that's a rant. You're going to have to deal with it. Not my problem."
Make something out of that, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a balancing act constantly. Like you cannot you cannot possibly produce the quantity of work that you, and not even in this like quantity over quality thing, but you owe yourself a level of work that's going to bring the most out of you. I think the only reason I've developed the confidence and the articulation and the charisma on camera I have is because I've produced an awful lot of work. And so I think you owe yourself a quantity of content that is far beyond whatever your perfectionism is currently letting you produce. Too many creators are so fixated on this ideal of what content needs to be that they then hold themselves back. And I think it's almost like this, I would almost call it like a self-defeating, what's like standing in their own way. Like it is them stopping themselves from achieving what they could achieve if they actually just let themselves produce more work. Because the best piece of advice I ever got creatively was from, I met, Garrett King, Short Stash.
I don't.
So he's like this amazing photographer. Morgan probably knows of Garrett. Anyway, Garrett King is incredible. And I always saw him as like the bastion of creativity, like the guy, incredible. Every single photo he'll take. I remember once he posted, when he first moved to New York City, he posted a photo of a pile of trash, like literally a pile of bags of trash, and it looked amazing.
And so he's a genius.
Yeah. And I always saw him as like, I was scared when I first met him because I was worried he looked at my work and was like, he's like the antithesis of what I am. And I met him and he's like, I love your work, Tom. And I told him, I was like, I always thought you were going to hate my work because you're like this creative genius. And he's like, I produce imperfect work that other people see as perfect. And so to him, his photography is garbage. It's just whatever he can produce that day. But he's produced so much photography over his 38 years or 36 years or however old he is, that now the stuff that he sees as imperfect, everyone else on Instagram looks at and goes, how is he so good? This is amazing. And so I think there is a volume that you have to, it's a balancing act. You have to produce enough volume that what people see and look at and go, oh my God, this is amazing, is actually the stuff that you see yourself as imperfect. My favorite is when people comment, the script was so good in this video, Tom. And I have to tell them, there's never a script.
Yeah.
There's never a script. There's never a hook. I never think about anything. It's just talk. And so that's only because I've produced a lot of work.
Why do you think people don't produce as much work as you produce?
Perfectionism. It's always perfectionism. They're either scared of the vulnerability, because when you hide behind I'm going to make it to this level of quality, or I'm going to produce this, it's because to a certain extent you're worried about the criticism that's going to come your way. And the more layers that you have between yourself and the produced piece of content that goes public, the more you have scapegoats that you can blame if someone criticizes your content. And so if I posted this piece that was like voiceover only, read from a script, highly edited, graphics everywhere, and someone said, Tom, that's shit, I could say, yeah, you're right, and point at my editor and go, those graphics were shit. Whereas if I just make a piece of content that's me talking to my iPhone and going, here's what I think, and here's what I think it'll help you with, and someone goes, Tom, that was shit, I have to then look at myself and go, yeah, that was pretty shit. It wasn't good. The hook was bad. I said something wrong, whatever it was. And so I think there's a level of vulnerability that comes with really imperfect work. And then I think it's just perfectionism. I think people,
when you say perfectionism, you're talking about like what they want to create isn't what they're creating. Yeah. So the gap between what they're creating now and what they want to create.
Yeah. Perfectionism is this funny one where the better you get, the further away it's going to get from you. And so if you become a better creator, your idea of perfect is actually further away. And so like, this is a beautiful set, but I'm sure Morgan's idea of a perfect podcast set is like so much further now that he's capable of doing this. Whereas 5 years ago, 10 years ago, Morgan might have looked at this and gone, this was it.
Yeah.
And so there's like this, it's an asymptote. The further that you get towards it, the further away it gets. And so it's this impossible goal. It's a zero-sum game. You're never going to get there.
Well, you hope you never get there.
You hope you never get there, exactly.
Yeah.
I think with
perfectionism, a lot of people don't realize that that gap between what you love and want to create to what you are creating is the force that's going to keep you showing up and innovating and creating something better. And if you think that today is the best thing that you've ever created, you're not going to show up tomorrow because you're going to lose all steam.
Yeah.
And so, like, I remember talking to students, this is when I was a wedding photography coach back in like 2014, and they would show me their Pinterest boards and go, here's the photos I want to create. And then they show me the photos that they are creating. And I'm like, that gap between what you want to create and what you are creating is literally the reason why you're here right now and you're showing up and you want to take more photos. And so you got to embrace that. You're never going to reach it, because once you do reach it, it's going to be a new Pinterest board.
Yeah.
It's going to be way better.
Yeah.
Just as you're saying.
Yeah. It's like back to the way we started, it's like the running thing. It's like if you left your house every day and tried to run the furthest you've ever ran, the fastest you've ever run, you're either going to get injured or unmotivated.
Which I do try and do that.
It's like the beginners. It's honestly like the beginner's passage.
Yeah, and then after 2 kilometers, I have to give up. I'm like, well, that didn't work.
It's so funny because like I had a friend of mine who just started running as well, and I said to him, I was like, run like an obscenely slower pace than you think is reasonable.
Totally.
And just go for as long as you can. And he did it the first time. He's like, this is legit. This is so much fun. I got to enjoy the scenery. It was sunset. People were out, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, it's an awful lot better than flogging yourself for 45 minutes 3 times a week. And so it's the same thing. Like most of your work is just going to be ticking the box today. And then it's so funny. My favorite pieces from the last 5 years were completely off the cuff moments I never could have planned for, never expected. One piece was I remember I was literally making a video, and my videographer at the time asked, he's like, what would you tell someone who's like, first year in, they're struggling to continue and they don't really know what to do? And I started speaking as if I was like authoritative and started going like, oh, you should do this, blah, blah, blah. And I stopped halfway through and I was like, actually, that's a fucking lie. That's not what I did at all. And then I said that on camera and I went, I have no idea why I continued, actually. I don't know, but I just decided to continue and it ended up here. So I don't have any advice for you except keep going.
Yeah.
And it was like, I still watch that video and cry a little bit each time because I'm like, that's fucking awesome. You caught me lying on camera and then saying what I actually felt. I could have never planned for that. And if I was worried about like the script being perfect and worrying about like, okay, I've got to show up on these days with this type of content and blah, 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 like that stuff would never happen. That moment is perfect, but only because I was imperfect in my execution.
With perfectionism, I would say the only reason why that I had any success as a photographer or even as a coach or anything is because I've allowed myself not to be perfect in front of everybody all the time. And it's just like, it is what it is. But one of the biggest moments I had as a wedding photographer is I won this award, and it was like called Rangefinder Top 30 Wedding Photographers in the World. And it was like a big deal to get it. And I was super stoked on it. At the time, I hadn't been shooting for very long. I didn't really know how to use my camera that well. I wasn't deserving of the award, if I'm being honest with you. Like it really just, I wasn't, And so it was just one of those things that just, it happened, and I was really thankful that it happened, but I wasn't like, yeah, I am the best. Anyway, I got this email probably like a month later, from a professor in Texas that taught photography. And he wrote me this gigantic email where we submit in 15 photos. He went through each photo and critiqued it and told me why I didn't deserve this award, and he can't believe that I got it. And I went through this email, and as I was reading it all, I was like, oh my God, he's so right. And then he told me how it should be. He's like, the composition should be like this, the exposure should be like this, the coloring should have been like this. This would have been a better moment 5 seconds later. And I sat there and I read it all. And after that, I was like, man, I am such a better photographer now. Thank you. And I remember thinking, like, the reason why I got that award is because I put my work out there and I submitted it out there. And the reason why he didn't is because he's waiting for perfectionism. I wasn't perfect, but I was posting. And once I posted, I got criticism like people try to avoid. That criticism allowed me to grow as a photographer. And then I got even better again and again and again. And throughout all of my careers in whatever I've done, I've always been able to take on that criticism. It's not someone poking fun at me, because I poke fun at myself. I'm like, man, wait until you see the work I create in 2 years' time. You know, it's going to be so much better. But I think you've got to have that humility of knowing that, like, hey, you know, other people are going to see the gap as well, and that's totally fine. Because at the end of the day, perfectionism, we're so scared of being called out that we're not as good as that we should be, or all that criticism because we're creatives and we're putting our heart in the sleeve and we're putting stuff out there. But honestly, if you're building a personal brand and you're creating a journey, like you said before, you're showing the work, you working, not the work. You show up differently, and you actually build a community. You build people that celebrate the wins with you because they're also there with the lows. You know, and I think that's very different to bragging all the time that you won. Just because you're perfect all the time. And with AI right now, and talking about barriers of entry, the barrier of entry is so low because you're talking about script, perfect photos, perfect videos, talking to camera and stuff. I mean, you can get an AI creator to do that now. So is that what people want?
No, of course not.
Does anyone want perfect?
No.
I've scrolled past perfect so often. It's just, I mean, if it's too perfect, what's the point? What am I watching?
Yeah, it's this. I mean, I think people should see it as a beautiful opportunity, because it means that there's like all of those things that were kind of annoying. Like script writing is annoying. Having a hook at the beginning of videos is annoying. Having to have the perfect thumbnail on your YouTube video is fucking annoying. Like all of these things suck. Whereas what we're actually doing, like if you get to the root of what you're actually trying to do, the root desire of building a personal brand, it's a group of human beings who know, like, and trust you. That's it. And all of the other things that we used to add that were necessary or suitable for the algorithm were kind of just there to let us actually do the thing that we wanted to do. They were kind of like hurdles that we had to cross before we got to actually do what we wanted to do. I remember it used to pain me so much that there was never any room in my YouTube videos, I'm talking like 6-7 years ago, for me to just talk about my feelings and talk about what I was thinking and talk about my passions and all that sort of stuff. And so then I started like a podcast, like a solo podcast, just talking for 45 minutes to an hour about whatever I wanted. Now you can just go straight to that because that's the only thing that AI can't do. And so having your zone of genius and then let people connect with every part of you it's the non-sexy advice, but it's probably the most important piece. It's so much easier for me to just go, oh yeah, have a really good hook at the beginning of your videos and
create a good thumbnail.
Yeah, create a good thumbnail and you go viral, and focus on growth and then authority and authenticity and all of these things. It's like, no, the thing that's actually going to help is be authentic and real and genuine on camera for an obnoxious amount of time.
As a creative brand yourself and someone that advocates and teaches people how to, you know, create an amazing brand, are you bullish on YouTube? And what would you say to people that say like, man, I'm too late to YouTube?
Yeah, I think YouTube, it's funny, right? So like YouTube is, Makili actually challenges me on this because she knows that I've always, like, as a kid, I used to watch YouTubers, not TV. And so like PewDiePie and Max Tuning and these vloggers from like 15, 20 years ago were people that I really admired when I was younger. And so she's always known that like there's a part of me that wants to be successful on YouTube, even just outside of success in terms of business. And so I'll put everything with a grain of salt. I think there is a part of my brain that just is obsessed with conquering that. But I think there is purely mathematical, right? Like my average view duration on YouTube is 6.5 minutes across my channel, across the board. I got 7,500 hours of watch time last month on YouTube. To get that equivalent, even just to get 6.5 minutes on Instagram, like the average view duration on my Instagram is like 14 seconds. So like that, we're talking years of content to get what I get in a month on YouTube.
And it would grow so much trust, so much deeper.
So much deeper. And so I think there is a, unfortunately, just because this is the way these platforms are designed, they're designed like, you know, gambling. It's designed to give you that little dopamine hit when you get an extra notification or an extra piece of engagement. But I think we really have to be honest about not all followers, not all views, not all engagement is made equal. And if you can get 1,000 people to watch a long form piece of content where you talk about something genuine for 35 minutes, that is so much more valuable than 1 million followers on a read the caption Instagram post.
Totally, totally.
It's just not the same. And so, yes, I think I'm enormously bullish on YouTube for that reason. I think just in terms of brand power, in terms of staying power, like every big YouTuber is rich. Not every big Instagrammer is rich.
Totally.
Like it's just a blanket statement across the board.
Again, you're looking at the patterns.
Yeah. But I also think it's hard to do. I said this before we started, but YouTube is much harder to do. And every single time you do something that is hard to do, you're competing with less people. And so, when you used to run the summits, like I used to look at those, I put them on a vision board for my business because I was like, Jai, it's so funny. There are 3 people in Australia and I would argue it's you, Taki Moore and Lewis Mocker. And it's so funny that like the 3 biggest people that I would argue are doing the most globally are in Australia, which is awesome. And it's because I look at all 3 of you and you're just going so much further than is necessary all the time. And I think there's a huge value in doing things that are extremely difficult to do, because the more difficult something is to do, the less people are going to do it. And so producing a YouTube video once a week is so much harder than producing 7 Instagram reels per week. And so if you can just do that thing, it's the
Would you
results
almost
are
say, like,
insane.
when you're looking at that, would you say your time would be better spent working out where that high value audience is and that higher entry level content piece is? So for instance, like let's say you are a busy entrepreneur and you've got a couple of businesses and you're doing a bunch of things and you're thinking, man, I just don't want to go on TikTok and create a TikTok persona. Like that's just not my thing. Like, would you say to that person, like, well, can you carve out half a day to make a good YouTube video? Or like, could you carve out half a day per week and like create a podcast?
Yeah. Again, I think it's like work with the constraints that you have, because a beautiful thing that gets missed in business and in personal branding and in life is anything can work. And so like if you're a runner and you've only got 1 day a week to get all your running in, that can work. Like there's a way to make that work. If you're a business owner and you've only got time for 1 Instagram platform or 1 Instagram video a week and you made that video really incredible, that can work. Anything can work. And so don't look at like someone like me whose entire job is basically work with my clients and create content, and then compare it to a high level of executive at a business who's deciding to want to build their personal brand and they've got 45 minutes on a Thursday afternoon to produce a video. That's a constraint that can work. So the first thing I would say is, yes, it can work. But the second thing is you do have to choose between, if I was someone who was really time poor and maybe had 30 minutes a day, not an afternoon once a week, well then yes, maybe a face-to-camera iPhone video with the 30 minutes that you have spare once a day on Instagram, even though it's not the most horsepower you can produce out of your personal brand, it's probably the best thing you can do right now. A mentor of mine and someone I really admire, Frank Grief, he used to tell me his Instagram, he called it TikTok time, where he would go to his conference room in his office for 30 minutes in his calendar after lunch. And that would be whatever comes out of his head in that 30 minutes is what gets posted that day on social media. And I was like, anyone, he's running a multi-million-dollar business, like anyone can do this. And so I would just make sure you understand that whatever constraints you have, you can make it work. And so don't look at these people that are producing, someone like me producing enormous amounts of content and go, I can't do any of it unless I can do what Tom's doing. So it's not true.
I think a lot of people would be stuck behind that.
Yeah.
Because they'll be like, well, I can see, I'm listening to Tom, but I just looked at his YouTube and he's posted lots. I'm looking at his Instagram, he's posting lots. Like, I'm not even going to jump into that, And so they're looking at someone like you that's so prolific, and then they're thinking that's a full-time job.
Yeah. Well, it is.
Yeah. When am I going to run my business?
Yeah.
But like, and probably one thing that you probably advocate is like, well, isn't content like one of the most important parts of your job?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
But it's funny, right? Like if I looked at a pie chart of my week to week, I would still put 70 to 80% of my time is on the business, not creating content.
Yeah.
And so I do actually think that's a bit of a mistake.
So what if you flip that and you did 70 to 80% of your time per week on content?
I just don't know if I would. See, I place a huge. I think there is an issue in, especially my space, like our space, like online education. I think there is a huge issue of really brilliantly manicured pieces of shit. Like these beautiful products from the outside, and then you pay and it's garbage on the inside.
I get you.
And so I've heard firsthand that your school, the six-figure map, the business map, was unbelievable. And it was almost like this beautiful thing on the outside, and then people got on the inside and they were like, oh my God, it's
even better.
Even better than I expected.
Yeah.
And I think there are very few people doing that.
Totally.
And so I've realized that those businesses, because people in the online education space forget that word of mouth exists.
It's actually is more important than ever before, I'd say, you know?
Yeah.
And the only reason why my business grew, it wasn't any of my content. It was like there was 10 people in there and they turned themselves into 20 and they turned themselves into 200 and then they turned themselves into 2,000.
Yeah.
So it's the same.
Exactly. And so there's this, I think for me at least, I've just always known, as soon as I got into online education, I was like, I'm going to win, not by having the craziest sales team or having the craziest marketing or the craziest launches or whatever. I'm going to win by making sure every single person who joins either knows that, hey, this was not for me, or this was unbelievable and did everything I expected and more. And yeah, they multiply. And so for me, it's like I place a huge amount of value on the time that I spend on the business. But again, it's still creating content. And so it's just paid content versus free content.
It is interesting. I have actually signed up to some courses of some like big time online educators that I'm like, man, these guys are the biggest. This is going to be epic, next level. And you jump in and you're like, oh, they spend all their time making content. There ain't anything in here.
Yeah.
You know? And then you kind of feel like you got swindled a little bit.
Yeah. And it sucks because it's like these people, it's probably not intentional. I don't think these are evil people. I think there's just been such a huge value placed on personal branding that people forget that there has to be a good business underneath it. Yeah. Like if you don't have a good business that people want to recommend, like I another mentor of mine, and I've become, you know, a huge advocate of him, but Lewis Mocker is someone who kind of flies under the radar. People don't really know him because he's only got 60-odd thousand followers on Instagram, maybe 11 or 12,000 on YouTube. But he's had a community. He's been selling online education since 2011, and he's had a community of more than 1,000 people since 2019. And he kind of just stopped. If you go to his Instagram, people who are watching this, I think he's posted like 4 times since 2022 on Instagram because he just didn't need to anymore. Yeah. There was enough people in there that were telling other people how amazing it is that he shifted all of his attention to just making content for his paying customers. And then they have just kept it growing over the last however many years. And so
that's fascinating.
It's unbelievable that you can eventually get to a point where genuinely you can get to a point where you have an online business that most people think is all social media driven. And it's actually just driven like a normal business where people have a really good experience and they tell other people about it.
You know, it's funny that you're talking about our products. Morgan was helped me build the business map and every other product. And Morgan, you can vouch for this. How many times did we were making decisions on something, like we were like, let's create this course or the program or something. And then we're like, we're going to build a set for it, or we're going to make a book for it. We're going to do this or that. And how many times we had a discussion of like, we don't need to do all of that. And then it comes back to, yeah, but we're doing it, you know? And so we'd always go above and beyond what we thought was reasonable and going like, let's go and spend way too much money on this, make sure it is way too good for everything. And I never knew the payoff until one day I hosted a workshop in Los Angeles. It was in person. There was about 150 people there. And I felt like no one ever noticed that we put that much effort into the summit or into the business map and stuff. And then after that workshop, there was 150 people, and then there was about a lineup of 50 people that wanted to come and just give me a hug and share a story of like when they came to one of my events or the course that they did or something. And people were like crying and like they were just sharing how they got inspired to make their own course and all these different things. And it was at that moment I realized, and I remember ringing Morgan and telling him, I was like, man, the thing that I couldn't measure what we were building was we were actually building a brand where it wasn't just online snippets. It was like an actual deep brand where people did feel those things, and the reward was way bigger than I couldn't plan it. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't any kind of rule book of like, this is what you're supposed to do and this is how you deliver. It was like, holy shit. Like I had no idea that existed until I was there in person with people and going, oh, okay, we've created something here.
Yeah. It's like the intangibles that it's way sexier to go, we had 7 book calls and we converted 4 this month than it is to go, we over leveraged ourselves on some new product launch and spent way too much money and put way too much effort. Like McKeely the other day, because we do weekly masterclasses in the community, and every single week it's a new masterclass. And McKeely's like, you're so stressed on the Monday because like from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. is the entire day is working on this masterclass. And I'm like, what's the alternative? Like,
what else am I doing?
What else am I supposed to do except work really, really hard to make sure this is incredible for everyone who joins? And so there is huge value in how much effort you can put into the stuff that doesn't pay you right now. Like if you can think about it, like in terms of content, especially to bring it back, you will be paid for the content you made last year, not today. And so whatever money you're making now is content you posted last year or the year before that, not what you posted today. And so view everything as kind of payment is the lagging indicator of the content you made.
It's so interesting because people are trying to post yesterday to make some money today. And what you're saying is like, hey man, you post today and you're not going to see results until next year.
Yeah.
You're not looking for results tomorrow. You're building something here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's hard to do, which is why so few people do it. Everyone goes for the sales calls or forking over 25% of their revenue for some sales team to do everything, or all the other things that people do to accelerate things now at the expense of future. Because anytime you kind of if you steal from Peter to pay Tom, you're going to have to pay that back at some point. And so if you accelerate things today, you're going to slow down your business. If you take a shortcut
today, you're stealing from your future self.
Yeah, I would argue.
That's what you're saying.
Most of the time. Like if you rush through a launch or you, persuasive people, cut a corner on your product, or you manipulate people, hard sell people, that sort of stuff, all of that has a lagging indicator, which is reputation. I think reputation is like that intangible, invisible thing that no one really talks about and doesn't really affect you until it really affects you. And so you won't know that reputation has been working against you until you're like, oh, I can't get anyone to buy anything anymore because my reputation's so poor. And there are plenty of creators
as well, because you don't know if your reputation's good.
Yeah. And then suddenly you sell something and you're like, why was that so easy?
Yeah. Like, why is everyone showing up now?
Yeah, why is everyone showing up now? Because your reputation's really good. And so this is very vulgar, but I used to have a joke with my students who, I had a lot of creatives who would join and be like, I don't know if I want to sell online education. I don't want to be known as a scammer, blah, blah, blah. Because people have this idea that anytime you learn something from a course, that person has to be a scam. And so I used to have this saying, and feel free to bleep this, but I was like, I used to tell my students, and a lot of them are American, so it always went over really well. But I used to say, you're not magically going to turn into a cunt just because you start selling online education. I was like, if you're a good person, like if you have good morals and good ethics and you're a good person who cares about other people's results, if you sell online education, you're going to be really successful. Like, because those ethics aren't going to suddenly disappear because there's info at the beginning of your business name. Like it doesn't happen.
That's a great way of looking at it.
And so if you are someone who deeply cares, you're deeply empathetic, and you actually want people to achieve results, you'll do amazingly well.
For you to keep getting all your students results and stressing out on Mondays, and for you to make short form content and to make YouTube videos each week and stuff, do you prioritize rest and recovery?
Yeah. So it's funny, we just made a huge decision in the business, and it was purely a selfish lifestyle choice. Like we went from selling high ticket, we sold like a 6-week program, high ticket with lifetime access, and then just flipped it entirely and made it monthly, where basically, the goal is to earn the same per customer. It's just I'm absorbing all the risk. And the entire reason we did that is because I know, or I need to know as a teacher, that people are receiving an ungodly return on every dollar they spend with my business. And if people aren't, they have the option to exit stage left. And so that was a huge source of stress with me, is these launches and getting people to buy and really, I knew that the value was there, but I know how people are. It's scary to invest in your education.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge source of stress for me, was, oh my God, I've got to fucking figure out a way to get another 60 to 100 students to buy a $6,000 program. Like, fuck. Meanwhile, we made the decision to flip, and now it's just, hey, join or don't join. If you don't want to, it's all good. We've got other people who are ready to.
So
and
making the decision like that is helping your mental health, but also you're
probably helping the business.
Helping the business, because like during the week, you're probably stressing a lot less.
Yeah, heaps less. It's for me, it's funny, right? Like I feel like I've been gifted in like a creative and analytical mind, but then I also like have the gift of severe ADHD where I cannot do something unless I really deeply feel connected to it. And so for me, I just realized I hate sales and marketing. I hate it. I don't like it. I don't like feeling like I'm having to fucking, anytime, what's the NLP, anytime NLP comes out in my marketing, I'm like, I feel a bit gross, like neuro-linguistic programming. I'm like, I don't like being persuasive or whatever. I would prefer to just post really good content. And if people want to invest in their education, they have the opportunity to do so.
Totally.
And then it's my job to keep them on the back end because the product is so incredible. And so that alone has produced such dividends in terms of my stress. But I've definitely not been perfect with it. I think I have a tendency to, the same part of my brain that has made me successful is the same part of my brain that stops me from relaxing.
Yeah, okay.
And so like even my running, right? Like I joked with, I was seeing my psych and she's like, why don't you just like run more? Like it sounds like running is a really relaxing thing. And I was like, because if I run more, I'll start racing. And if I start racing, that'll be a source of stress. And so like, it's just this flip in my head that just needs to redline all the time. And so for me, the mitigating stress has just been really, actually, ironically, disciplined in my relaxation. And so like, it's funny if anyone spent a day with me, they'd be like, why does Tom not start work until like 10 a.m.? Like he reads for like from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. He just sits there and reads. And it's like, well, I know that if I don't do this, I'll get sick every 2 months or every 3 months. Or, I don't drink. I go to bed at 8:30 p.m. every night. I am really boring on the weekends. My favorite thing to do on a Saturday morning is go for a 2.5 hour run by myself with no headphones and just think about stuff. Like I know I need to do those things because if I don't, it's not going to work out.
Do you think a lot of creatives forget that they can actually step away and take a rest and reset?
Yeah. I think that's, well, it's this really hard thing, right? Where I think it's a combination of things. So creatives start by, this is all they ever want to do. And so normally someone who gets into running an online business with social media, it's because at one point that was, if I could have gifted it to you, they would be like, oh my God, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And so then to be in a position where it is the thing that you do and you are making great money and you are producing content, it then starts to feel like a bit of a prison where you are trapped making content every single day. And if you stop, the money dries up. And so there's a tricky spot that a lot of creatives get into where they then have to find something else that can basically be the source of relaxation and the thing outside of their work that they enjoy doing. I think for me, running has been such a gift and training has been such a gift because if I have a shit week in business, but I ran 90 kilometers, I'm like, I had a good week. And it doesn't really matter what the business is doing or how much content I produced. Even like during my summer breaks, like as I go on holidays or whatever, I then shift fully to like being a pseudo professional athlete and I'll just train lots of hours. And then I get a lot of personal fulfillment out of that, even though I'm giving my brain a break. I think there's also life is seasons. Like I know I'm already planning as we grow this next evolution of the business. I'm being very intentional in, that goal of getting people in the front end so I then keep them for a really long time. I have a number in my mind where I'm actually going to take my foot off the gas in terms of content and focus more on that and then start taking Thursdays and Fridays off. Because I know I'm going to come to a season in my life where it's a relaxing season. And yeah, it's heartbreaking when creatives don't do that, because they end up in this situation where their content just divulges into, I feel awful and this is not working and I can't figure out how to make anything work. And not to like guilt people into, I think content should be a place that you can express yourself, but it is heartbreaking to see some people who desperately want to be creative and then they're trying to be creative through their negative emotion, when the best thing they could probably do is just walk away for a bit, give themselves a break.
Do you find you've been around doing this for a long time, just like myself? Have you seen a lot of people come and go?
Yeah.
And you probably realize that like they would have been here a lot longer if they actually took a break.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's life and business. There's so many people. Like I know like 3 off the top of my head who were unbelievably talented. I know one guy who I remember we became really close friends, and he was such a talented videographer. Came along, I remember he gained like 120,000 followers off one post. Just one day it went ballistic. Like this video got like 10 million views at the beginning of Reels.
Wow.
And so just went crazy, but he didn't build the resilience, didn't know that muscle of I just need to be persistent even when things don't feel like they're working anymore. He didn't realize or ever learn that lesson. I think this is something I talk about a lot, where I've known a lot of creatives, especially young people, because content creation is this weird one where out of nowhere, the world or the universe can gift you a lot of success really quickly.
Totally.
And I don't know if you're very into like, this is probably, we're a fair way into the podcast, so maybe we can talk about the real shit. But like, I don't know if you're into like John DeMartini, like balance, universal laws, that kind of stuff.
I do love that stuff, yeah.
And so there's like this, I feel like everything always, especially people who find a lot of success quickly, they then experience a lot of struggle because they never learn the tolerance to pain that you need in order to continue to succeed. I've always tried to describe like, success is not a place you get to, it's a muscle that you have to continue to train. It's like fitness. And so you can get really, really fit. I've been, like world championship qualifying Ironman time fit. I'm nowhere near that now. And if I tried to maintain that 100% of the time, I would have burnt myself out, gotten sick. I know a friend of mine who got rhabdo because he kept trying to go to world champs every single year over and over again. And so there's just no way you can maintain that. And I think young guys or young girls who have something go viral and then they gain 100,000 followers or 200,000 followers, they almost never learn the lesson of, success takes basically persisting through the pain over and over again. Whereas someone like myself, because I look at my journey of just a series of repeated failures over and over again, even just like recently going through the realization like, I can't do another launch. That is what I would consider a failure. But it then turned into the business I now get to enjoy as a lifestyle choice because of the change that I made. Many people in that situation would have just gone, yep, I'm done. That's it. I need to change.
Totally.
And not do this anymore.
They don't have that muscle to be able to pivot.
And so there's a confidence I have now as a result of repeated failures where I know no matter what, like if, God forbid, my things just, I don't know, something happens and everything disappears overnight, I know with full confidence that I can get back to it because I got there in the first place. And I know all the failures that it took to get there. And so I think when you succeed really quickly, it actually sets you up for more challenge because you have to learn that lesson in reverse. It's easy to learn the lesson where it's like, I posted content and no one watched it. I posted content and no one watched it. It's hard when you have to go, I posted content and lots of people watched it. And now I'm posting content and no one's watching it.
Yeah, that is much harder.
It's hard.
In my new book, I talk about how I had a friend that kept telling me that like one day we could win the lottery. We could win the lotto and we can be rich.
Yeah.
And my mindset is, we don't need to win the lotto. Yeah. We can be rich. And he didn't understand like, what does that mean? How does that work? And I was, it's not a single event that's going to get us rich. Like from right now, we can work towards something that can get us that income or get us, to our goals. But so often, and there's been a lot of like, resources and studies on this, but a lot of us, when we struggle, we always think it's going to be an event that changes our life. And an event could be once I get 1 million views on something,
Yeah.
or once I win the lottery, or once I get that pay rise, or that whatever it is. And then those that end up succeeding over the long period, it's never an event. It's just like, oh, what's the one skill I need right now that's going to get me a couple more views on my social media? And then as you're building those things, you're building everything behind, which is your confidence, your skills, everything that it takes to get you there. And then once you do get viral, you're equipped with it so you can handle it. But also, hey, maybe the next reel is going to get 5,000 views. The last one got 5 million. It's not going to shake you because you've been there before. It's just like, oh, that's just part of the process, man.
Yeah.
Where what I've noticed was a lot of accounts that I've seen or like personal brands is they're blown up real quick and then slowly it's just tapered off to nothing. But they just give up straight away because it's, they didn't build the thing. So it's like easy come, easy go almost.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like wealth building. It's like wealth building is this hilarious thing where if I could transport back to myself 10 years ago and gift him the money that I now have, he would have he'd lose it. Whereas because I built it slowly over time and tracked it meticulously over time, it's now a number that doesn't feel like anything. I just look at that each month when I do my reporting and go, oh, that's cool. It's only because it built it slowly that I'm able to now have that and not have it destroy my entire life. And so the easy come, easy go thing is, I think everything is always, it's such a lot of people push back on this because I think it's a really hard thing to stomach, but I think everything is always setting you up for where you need to be most of the time. And people can call that delusion or people can call that, religious or spiritual or whatever. But I think everything is always setting you up for what you need to possess in the moment that you possess it. And if you ever quit, it's because you're not listening to whatever signal that is. And sometimes those signals are really hard to hear, like I have no money and this is not working and I need to pivot and change and take a huge risk when I have no risk to give. That's not an easy thing to do consistently, but that's something that you've done dozens and dozens and probably hundreds of times. It's something that I've done at least 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 times of my career. And so you're right. It's like the easy come, easy go thing is so, well, it's reassuring for people to hear because I think people get envious of someone who, they hear of like the 21-year-old kid who's like gained 1 million followers overnight, or the 22-year-old who started some AI company and sold it for 100 million, or the person who won the lottery or whatever. It's like, don't be envious of those people because they are now facing all the challenge that you're going to experience on the way there retroactively. And so it's the reason why rappers and NBA players and these people go bankrupt even though they have salaries of tens of millions of dollars a year, because they're gifted, they're teleported to this place that actually takes a fuckload of resilience and persistence to get to, and they never learn that lesson, and so they lose it just as quickly.
Back end. With content, I think a lot of people hold themselves back because they are definitely worried about publicly, I guess, failing. Yeah. And like failing looks different to everybody because somebody might usually get 200,000 views and something and they get 5,000 and that's for them failure, And I think the more micro failures that you go through in your life, the more that you are able to withstand or overcome, or even after a while not even notice that you're failing at things because they're completely different metrics. For you in your career, have you had many or any standout times where you felt like, shit, I've failed or I am failing right now?
Oh yeah, massive. Oh man, fuck, in the last 12 months, yeah. There's been so many. Like it happens over and over and over and over again. It's funny. Like I said this at the start of the pod, but like it's kind of perfect for this explanation. But when you're living in your own existence, I think a really good exercise that people could do, and I've done this multiple times through content creation, but I think anyone should do this. Go back through your camera roll for as far as it goes and just airdrop memorable moments into your computer. Like airdrop it into a folder. And then I want you to go back through that and look at that progress over the course of your entire life, and it'll feel unbelievably linear. It'll be like, oh my God, I quit my job in 2016 and then I did this and then I did freelance and then I tried to do that business for a bit, but it didn't really work. And then I did this and so blah, blah, blah. And now I'm up here. But living in it is like oh, I started this business, spent 6 months on it and it didn't work at all. And now I have to
it went
figure out what's
nowhere.
next. Or I had this freelance client and they were a fucking nightmare. And so I had to pay them. I remember I paid back a freelance client $25,000. I had like $27,000 in my bank account. I paid them back 25 because they were such a nightmare. They were destroying my life. Biggest paying client I've ever had. And halfway through the editing process, I was like, I can't take this anymore. And so I paid them a full refund, gave them all the footage, and I was like, you need to find someone else to edit this. That took fucking balls, and it was a huge failure of mine because I just couldn't handle it. I remember we bought a property in 2024, 8 months in, the house flooded. We just sold it for 45% less than we bought it for.
Wow.
Like almost half the price of what we bought it for because we got sold a dud. It was a huge failure. Like we lost, more than $500,000 on this property. And so like I think there's a huge idea that people have when they look at other people and they just forget that all of the experiences that you experience, that person has in perfect proportion to you. It might not look objectively the same, but subjectively that person has experienced everything that you're experiencing. And so there's no failure that's unique. There is no experience that is unique. Obviously people are going to get fucking really angry at that one, but subjectively everyone is experiencing the same failures that they're experiencing.
Like even just going off that thread, I remember, so when I was young, I grew up like homeless and in government housing and stuff like that. And I remember people would always say to me like, oh, like this bad thing happened to me. Oh, don't worry. It's not as bad as what you've gone through. But I've never seen anything like that. I've never felt it like that way because I'm like, no, you went through the same feelings that I went through. There is no levels on that. It's like you could be filthy rich in a mansion and you're unhappy because of whatever reason. Like you deserve to have those feelings. You can't take them away because of whatever circumstances that you're in, you know? And I think a lot of us, we sometimes feel guilty because we're so privileged that we shouldn't be feeling that way, or like, I've got such a successful business. What am I complaining about? Or on the other side, we might feel envious of other people because they're like, well, they're not going through the same struggles that I'm going through. They don't understand what it's like. I don't have time to create content because I got 10 kids to, whatever it is that's going on in their lives. But when you pull back the curtains for most humans, there is a whole wardrobe full of things that, is not ideal for them, I think.
Yeah. Everyone's experience. I think everyone has something. Everyone. There's not a person on planet Earth that isn't going through some weird experience with their family, with their life, with their partner, with their children, with their health, whatever it is. There's always something that someone's experiencing. And I think the moment you can fully acknowledge that, it gives you the grace to then go, oh, okay, my failures, not that it like diminishes your failures, but it makes you understand that it's setting you up for what you will eventually want to achieve. You just have to be persistent enough to keep listening and keep learning from those things. There's a beautiful, I guess there's a beautiful purpose once you finally acknowledge like everything that's happening to me is happening for me.
Yeah.
And once you fully acknowledge that, it's hard to then look at anything too negatively because you're like, okay, what is this? What is this setting me up for? This is clearly teaching me a lesson I needed to learn.
I think about comparing my last struggles with the struggles that I have today. So like when I was 21, I had a business and I went bankrupt. And that was like, it was obviously a low point of my life. So it's sort of like what your dad went through, but I had to go through that because my dad, he never got to be bankrupt. Yeah. But it's whenever I'm thinking about like the struggles that I'm in, I always do compare them to where I've been before and how did I come out the other side of those struggles and how did I feel or how did I become a better man or whatever it is. Do you feel like that? Like when you look back at like a lot of these things. So for example, because we get to choose whether it like holds us back or not. So an example is like your house got flooded. That could be seen as a big failure. You feel terrible about it. Maybe it's like publicly humiliation in front of your family and other people that, all these things could come up. But it could be so easy for you to go like, well, I'm never buying a house again because that's a ripoff. Like it's, what everyone's telling us is not true. Don't do it. Don't invest. Like, do you ever allow those low moments to hold you back, or do you feel like they bring you up in a new way?
Well, it's like back to the lessons you learn, right? So like that situation, I've had a really interesting experience with that where in the moment that it happened, it's funny, I'll just be really honest. I feel like this entire past 12 months has been like a huge come to Jesus moment for me, where like I've learned all of these really, really, really crucial life lessons as a result of this situation. Because if I'm really honest with myself, a lot of my early success was a result of like genuinely like hatred. Like I looked at the person, I used to have a screensaver on my phone. Because the guy that, like, basically what happened with my dad is he had a longtime best friend, business partner, and in a moment of vulnerability, he wrote a malicious contract. These guys were friends for 40 years. My dad just signed it without thinking, and this guy knew that, and he signed over power of attorney of my dad's parents and basically full ownership of the business and wrote my dad out of it in an instant.
Wow.
And so I remember I used to have a screensaver on my phone where I said, this person, this surname, because I remember as a kid, there were trucks that had Noske on them and all of them got wiped and changed with Kelly. Wow. And I had this screensaver. I was like, he will die one day and Noske will still mean more than Kelly. And so a lot of my early success was just pure hatred for this person. And so then we go through this situation this year or last year. And for the first little bit, I was like, fuck this real estate agent who did this. Fuck the previous owner who knew this house was a problem. Like all of these people, I remember I was like, because McKeely went to all the open for inspections because I was too busy with work in Melbourne. And so I was like, how can this real estate agent look at McKeely, who was 23 at the time, and go, yeah, we're going to sell this dud to these people. And I remember I carried so much hatred. There were moments where I was genuinely like, out for blood. Like I used to fantasize about bumping into the agent or the previous owner in public. And then I had a moment where I realized, I don't know why I had this moment. Again, it's probably a moment of spirituality or whatever. And I just had this thought. I was like, the only way through is forgiveness. Like the only path through is forgiveness. And so it started out by me going like, oh, maybe I don't really want to fuck these people, but at least it's a thought now in my mind. And that slowly then navigated to me meeting a friend of mine who's this deeper religious friend of mine who's, brought me in and shown me a lot of the things. I'm still sort of on the path, but then also learning about John DiMartini and his work, and then meeting Lewis and all that sort of stuff, and these people that are very into this world of universal laws and that sort of stuff. And it's now translated into, I've gotten myself to the point where I know with full confidence that what happened is the best thing that's ever happened to McKeely and I, for our relationship, for our future, for our families, for everything that's going on. I've fully forgiven the Kelly guy. And now if I ever bumped into the real estate agent in public, I would shake his hand and thank him for the situation that he put us through. Yeah, wow. Because it's turned us into the people that we are today. And so there's this weird, no, I don't think I ever had this I now think in the future, I will definitely have that approach to future failures, but I needed to go through that failure to learn that lesson that's now going to help with future situations. And so it's this weird, beautiful thing where all of the things that you're going through are probably setting you up for what you will eventually succeed with. And so if your business isn't working, if your content's not working, there's a reason. And, you can call it the universe, you can call it God, you can call it whatever, or you can just call it my content sucks right now and I need to improve.
Let's be honest.
But it's like there's a reason, and you need to. It's trying to teach you that lesson until you learn that lesson, it won't work. Even like we had this beautiful period through like September, October, November last year where I was like had that moment. Really acknowledged it, felt like I forgave Chaz, like genuinely wrote this kind of letter to him, was like, I forgive you for everything you did to my dad, I forgive this person, blah, blah, blah. And then like a fucking miracle, this person came into our life and we sold the property completely off market with no real estate agents, no one, just privately to this person that I didn't know prior to this situation. And they bought it for a price that is way more than we ever thought we'd be able to get out of this situation for. And it was almost like the universe going like, well done. You've learnt the lesson I was trying to teach you.
You've gone past.
Yeah.
It's interesting, hey, that you say that it started from a lot of pain and then you've kind of moved through that. It's with your journey and moving through that, do you feel like you have liberated almost to like a whole new level, like a whole new power base for yourself of where you can come from? Because there's like one thing of when you're creating content or you're doing something because you're getting away from pain opposed to going towards ambition.
Oh yeah,
you know.
big
So
time.
it's almost flipped for you. It's like I can let go of that pain now, and now all I have is ambition.
Yeah.
So like, get out of my way.
Well, it's almost like an unconscious thing, right? So like people know. Like people know when they look at someone like. When you consume someone's content, you get an energy from that person that's outside of anything they're saying, outside of whatever they're trying to portray. And if that's coming from a negative place, even though it's positive energy that's produced from a negative place, that's going to be felt through the content that you're watching.
Yeah.
And so it's, again, back to these intangible, invisible things that you don't notice until it's too late or you achieve a wild amount from it. Yes, like it creates a completely different approach to everything you do, because now you're giving from a place of all I really care about genuinely when I turn the camera on is like, I want this to be helpful. And so even showing up here today, it was like my only focus for this conversation is like, how can I be of service and help someone in any way possible? And that is a completely different place from like, how can I achieve success because of the hatred that I feel? That's a completely different place. And so the energy you're going to feel, the energy you're going to feel afterwards, like I'm not going to be drained from this because I was trying to perform for whatever idea I had in my mind.
Yeah.
It was just, no, I'm trying to be here and be of service. And so, yeah, I think that's a very hard thing to do though. Like I think there's a lot of people.
You can't force that ever.
You can't force that.
It's something that happens.
It's like an unlearnable lesson. Like there's the unlearnable lesson of like, don't date the person who is really toxic and makes you feel awful about yourself. It's like, that's a lesson that everyone has to learn themselves.
Yeah.
And so there's the unlearnable lessons.
Almost what you're saying here is like, it's wisdom that's going to come, but you can't listen to someone and say, oh, okay, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. You can't be in a place where you've been fucked over or something's happened and you're acting out of hatred and resentment, and then listen to me say something and go, he's right.
Yeah.
I'm going to flip the script.
Boys.
Time to change. It's just going to be a situation where, you're just going to have to learn that lesson when life decides to teach you that lesson. But that's like, again, back to that idea of, I think, the idea in psychology of awareness is 90% of the battle. If you can get yourself to the point where you realize that whatever you're going through is teaching you something, then maybe you approach the lessons you do go through with a little bit more positivity, and that little bit more positivity helps you in a way. I had a experience with a friend of mine recently who got, kind of got fucked over by, they're in physical products, and they got fucked over by a producer in China for their product, and their Black Friday launch basically meant that they sold 1,000 of their product that wasn't going to be delivered. And so an amazing moment turned into a PR nightmare where thousands of customers were not going to get their product anywhere near on time. And they went through this process of like, oh, I'm going to sue, and we're going to figure out how to take them for everything they have and all this sort of stuff. And I just said to them, I was like, what have you learned from this lesson? And they were like, okay, well, I need to get clearer about who I'm working with in China. I probably need to know more about it on the ground. I probably need to go there at least once and meet these people. I probably need to build more of a relationship and such and such. And I was like, do you think that'll make next Black Friday sale bigger or smaller? And they're like, bigger. And I was like, okay, so are we going to sue this person, or are we going to just move on and see this as a lesson that's going to grow your business? And that decision to sue, or that decision to grow the business with a little bit more positivity for the lesson, will completely change the trajectory of
you're coming
business.
from a completely different place of power.
Yeah.
Because one, you're on defensive, and the other one, you're offensive.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's a very hard thing to do, but if you can go in just with a little bit, even if it's just like a glimmer of like, okay, I'm learning a lesson, not experiencing a failure, that might change everything for you.
Just to finish off, last question, and this is going based on what we were just talking about and being more positive and stuff. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of creativity around AI and where we're at right now, and as content creators and personal brands?
Yes. Yeah, big time. I think, again, back to everything we've kind of spoken about, like, I think it actually makes it leaves more room for your gifts and your talents and the things that you're actually really brilliant at to come out, and all of the annoying shit that you used to have to do because it was the only way to garner attention actually gets eliminated. And so, yes, there will be, like everything, like any situation in life, there will unfortunately be a kind of culling of mediocrity. Like if you are kind of producing content, and you will know, like if this strikes a nerve, if you're like, oh yeah, I am just producing a scripted 5 tips on X thing for X outcome, and there's no personality, yeah, you are going to have to evolve and change. But if you are one of these creators who is, like we talked about, deeply empathetic, you actually care about people's results, you're actually focused on making an impact, you're trying to be of service,
trying to give,
you're only going to have more impact, because the desire for that will only become stronger as it becomes commoditized.
Done.
Cool. Beautiful.